joining us this morning. And yes, as Shasta mentioned, it is cold and snowy here in South Central Kentucky. So I wanted to reestablish, if that's the term, uh, the absence policy. And, we're all professionals, and this has not been a problem, but it is something that we need to measure. So I would ask that, uh, we would ask that you limit your absences to 3 annually. And the definition is of annual is the calendar year. So from today through December of 2022, we look for uh, no more than a total of 3 absences. If you know that you're going to miss, I would ask that you notify myself, and we will uh, put that on file. And uh, great to know, and great to uh, make some necessary decisions. Uh, Again, 3 absences per annual year, and the year starts today. Is for this purpose. So, Dr. Williams, I would like to pass on to you, and thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Pete. And before we go to my update, are there any questions for Pete around the absences? Any questions? And if you have any questions, you can, of course, please direct those questions to Pete. But again, if it starts today, so any absences prior to today, we're not looking at those. So we're looking at from today going on to next January, in regards to the 3 absences. And so, in regards to my update, periodically we meet with our HDI evaluator, and he kind of goes over the grant with us to see, if we're on target and anything that we need to do in regards to moving the grant forward. So one thing that we are charged to do, we have to evaluate scholars. And so I don't want to go too in depth with how that will look because we're in the process of kind of talking with the evaluator to kind of see how that will look. But do know that the grant is asking that we do evaluate you all. We don't really have the logistics, in a seat of transparency. We don't have the logistics or the logistics of how that will look. We're at the beginning stages of kind of talking about the evaluation and what will go into the evaluation. But the next Saturday seminar, which I believe is February the 29th, I believe, we'll be able to go a little deeper in regards to the evaluation and how that will look and what you all will be evaluated on. So again, no need to worry. We're just finding this out ourselves, and we'll provide more information during the next Saturday seminar. So are there any questions for me in regards to the evaluation? I don't have much information to provide, but we'll definitely give you more information at the next Saturday seminar. So are there any questions that I can answer at this time? Okay, so I will pass it on to my colleague, Bill Buchanan.
Thank you, Dr. Williams. Thank you, Pete. And thank you, Shasta. Thanks, everyone, and welcome and good morning. I have 2 items to share in the update. One is the calendar, and the other is the discussion board. I'll say more about the discussion board here in a moment. Many of you have asked about our upcoming sessions. It would be helpful to know the strands and the topics ahead of time. So when you go to the website, to SharePoint, you will now find in the general resources a calendar for cohorts 1 and 2. It's listed under Saturday schedule. I would encourage everyone to go out to general resources and check out the calendar. Of course, it's subject to change based on the real world, right? When things change, it may be updated, but it does provide you with the upcoming strands and the topics for each cohort and your cohort's cycle. Okay, next, I'm going to talk about the discussion board, and this is a new activity. What we would like for you to do is to use the link, and maybe I will drop a copy of the link here in just a moment in the chat. but go out and see if you can access the link to the discussion board. The purpose of the discussion board is to provide you with opportunities for posting comments and questions and ideas about the Kentucky Leads Academy. So for example, say back in the fall during Dr. Miller's session, you might have learned something about collaboration, the importance of collaboration. You might have learned that collaboration leads to higher retention rates. So you might go out to the discussion board, write about that, what you learned, and how you're applying what you learned from that or any other session, including today's session with Paula and Andrea. This information is very helpful. One, it's a way to further network with your colleagues in both cohorts between Saturday seminars. Two, it's important because it allows us to show the evaluators the skills, the knowledge and the skills that not only that you're learning during these Saturday sessions, but how you're applying what you learn in your workplace settings, whether that's a school, a collaborative, here at the Department of Education, or other settings. So with that, I'll see if there are any questions. Okay, well, please do so. Go out to the discussion board and by
Bill,
next.
someone has their hands up. Their hand up.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes, Stacy. Yes.
Stacy.
Good morning. And I just actually did go out to the discussion board while you were talking to check it out. And I'm looking at how to reply. When you click on the actual discussion, it doesn't say anything about creating a new thread or the new discussion with the little X. Usually, like when you go into something, it'll have that little plus button to add something new, and I'm not seeing that on there, so I didn't know if the question was actually functional right now. Or do we have to go?
No, thanks for that. I'll work on this because I created the discussion board, so I'll work with that. Work on that, Stacy. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah,
This
I
is
didn't
fine.
know if it was like if you actually had to go into the discussion to write, usually that's how it works, is like you go into the discussion and you hit a reply to the discussion, or if you had to go and do where it said, what did it say? New discussion, and I don't think that's the appropriate way to do that.
I
So
think the best thing to do, well, number one, everyone play around with it today. You're not going to break it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you may want to try both creating a discussion, maybe asking a question, because this is your all's board. The questions don't have to be from us. They can be from you. And so again, you're not going to break it. See if you can create a discussion, a new discussion, answer a question, propose a question, feel free. And I see lots of people that says that there's various levels of access, and we'll continue to work on this. That's why today we're just introducing it in a real informal way so we can figure out these settings. And I've already gotten an email from someone requesting, Lindsay, thank you, an email from someone requesting access. So yeah, we'll continue to work on that. And Abby, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we'll follow up. I think it'd probably be a good idea, since we do have some access issues, it'd probably be a good idea for us to try to get these things worked out, and then we'll send you guys an email and say, hey, we think we have everything fixed. Try again, because your Teams is real tricky. Sometimes it's like, yes, everybody can use Teams, and other times it's like, no, only certain people can use Teams. So we'll work on it, and we'll see if we can get that fixed for you guys. And I do appreciate everyone trying to get in there and work it out. And
Absolutely. Likewise. I
Okay.
appreciate everyone trying, and that a few glitches here, but as Becca said, you can't break it. And if we're going to work out, some of the challenges, but the idea is so important, right? It gives us a chance to share about the learning and how you're applying the learning. So stay tuned. We'll have more to provide and share about the discussion board in the near future. With that, I'm going to turn it back over to Shasta.
All right. And like I said, we'll follow up. We'll try to get the kinks worked out. And we do apologize. Team, we thought we had it worked out. You guys know how it is. It's like, yeah, I've got everything worked out. And I had somebody test it and I had somebody try it. And then it turns out it didn't work the day of, which is, that's just how it goes with technology sometimes. So we do apologize, but we will work on it for sure and we will get it fixed. And so I guess we'll go ahead and move on to our early childhood education and supporting effective transition from Part C to Part B. And I think Paula and Angie are going to lead us in this learning. And Paula, you're going to start us off. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm going to start us off. And I think we
Alrighty.
decided I would move my own slides.
Yes, I'm gonna let you be the captain of your own ship. So I'm gonna leave here and stop presenting, and you can take over.
Okay, great. Thank you, Shasta. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to take just a minute here to, do this magic of the shared screen. So I hope everyone can see it. Once I get to that point, I can't see it. So let us know if there's any glitch. But I want to thank everybody for coming today and for requesting more information on Part C. That was really a nice boost for my ego, as well as really pleased to see the interest in First Steps and the Part C system. I'm going to talk a little bit about some reminders. Let me see if I can get these slides to change over here. Okay, we're not changing. Let's see what's going on. Okay. Okay. And let's see if that did it. No, that did not do it. I'm sorry. Don't you love these, technology glitches? They're always so fun. So fun. Let me see here. But I do want to, since the last time we met, there has been a lot of living going on between December and January. It's been a month of holidays. It's been a month of snow, some warm days. We had that for a while. And it really has been quite interesting to think about where we are and what we're doing, and to think about how we look at, Part C in our new life. We have a new year. It does feel a little bit like deja vu, but, we're always hopeful that the next year will be better. Again, just to remind you of some of the things that were the objectives of last month's session was, to learn more about our early intervention system here in Kentucky, and about, what's similar, but what's also different about Parts C and Part B, and then the issue of an effective transition as children move from one program to the other. Okay, now how did that move? All right. So the purpose, to remind you about Part C. Part C is a little different than Part B. And Part C is the younger part of the federal statute. But they really, at the time that they enacted the law, they really looked at what would be the benefits. And they looked at some of the model programs that the Department for Education in Washington had done with young children. And that's where they got the impetus to think about adding a part to the law that would address children under the age of 5. There were, two parts. One was Part C, the infants and toddlers. But they also did Section 619 at that time. And Section 619 is the 3 to 5 year olds, what we know in Kentucky as the preschool services in the state funded preschool. So, you know, they really found that starting early did make a difference over the lifespan of the children. And those studies still continue. The original studies, the Abecedarian study, they also looked at the Minneapolis study. You know, they all talked about the improvement for not only the child, but the family as well. And so those really gave the impetus and kind of the foundation that this would be a good investment of money and a good investment of time. And of course, they were really interested at the time, because of the rising costs in special education, to think about the future costs of special education. We also, about that time, were thinking about how we have our citizens with disabilities. How do we really help them become productive and be independent and contributing citizens in our society? So just kind of a quick recap about what's different in early intervention. You know, early intervention focuses really on that family unit. I jokingly often say when I speak is, you know, infants and toddlers aren't out there being raised by wolves. They have families, and the families may have a variety of constitutions. It can be a single family, it could be a two-partner family, you know, it could be a family who is homeless, it can be a family who is very wealthy. You know, everybody has a family. It could be blood relations. It could also be close friends that make that network of a family. But they are the most important people in that infant and toddler's life. That's where they are really learning all about the world. It's from those nurturing relationships and those close ties. And so when we think about providing early intervention, what's important is that we think about what are the outcomes that we should address, and how do we address those and include the family. So one of the big differences is that outcomes on an individualized family service plan, or an IFSP, are based on what's the family's priorities, concerns, and resources. And as a child is in First Steps, for those who stay in for a length of time, usually most of our children are in for about 15 to 18 months. But what happens is those outcomes are going to change because the family's priorities, concerns, and their resources change over that 18 months. Think about your own families and the changes that may have occurred over the last 18 months. So that IFSP really does become a living document that supports that change, that natural change over time. Our instruction consists of coaching parents on strategies that they can use in their daily routines that will enhance growth and development. As many of you, I'm sure, have children, and if you think back about when you brought that little baby home, they didn't give you a set of instructions. Now, you may have had a lot of friends and family who gave you quite a few instructions on what to do, but you know, families have to, you know, parents have to figure out for themselves what's going to work for their family. And what works for family A may not work for family B. And daily routines, you know, I think all of us often think of daily routines being a kind of a set pattern, but that is not true for everyone. And so we really spend time finding out about what's a typical day. What does it look like, starting from when they awake in the morning till the time they go to bed. And then we think about where are the opportunities within that day to address challenges, and when are there opportunities to expand upon the successes and the learning that the child is doing. Parents pay a fee for participating in First Steps that is based upon a sliding fee scale. Families who have Medicaid are not charged a fee, but those who are at 250% of poverty or above then have a fee assessed to them. They pay that on a monthly basis, and it's just for it's like a gym membership. It's for just being in the program. Early intervention is not a free, appropriate public education. It is different. And so that is why we are able to charge a participation fee. And I'll be honest, we don't charge a whole lot. The highest fee that any family would pay is $400 a month. We have very few that pay that, because we also allow that if they have private insurance and they allow us to bill their private insurance, we'll waive the family fee. So we really don't have very many who pay a family fee. But, you know, so every month we send out invoices and get some money back. Part of doing that is really to support, you know, sometimes people who get things free may not value them as much as if they had to pay for it, even if it's $2. They're more likely to be there for the appointment, et cetera. And that's an issue in our program, is we pay providers to go out and see a family, and then that's a no-show, that provider doesn't get paid. Parents can also accept or decline a service without jeopardy. That means when we talk about the services that their child may be in need of and how those could help, the family can decide what's most important for them. If mealtime is just a bear and they're really having trouble feeding their baby and it takes so long and this, that, they may choose to deal with those issues and not deal with other motor issues such as crawling or walking, because at that moment, that's the critical issue for them. The only service that they must accept is service coordination. That's the only way they get access to the services, is to go through a service coordinator. However, a service coordinator typically isn't seeing a family on a weekly basis. Those are our OTs and our PTs, our developmental interventionists and such, who are doing that. And so sometimes families can accept a service, or they'll turn down a service that we as a professional think, oh, shouldn't do that. And it has been hard. I'll just be honest with you. It has been hard for many of our clinicians who are accustomed to telling people what they need, to now work in a system where they need to listen to that parent and honor that parent's choice, whether or not they agree with it, because agreement is not the issue. It's the parent's choice. And we are also a program that serves children 12 months a year. I just finished, we finished up and wrapped up December, and typically December is a very low service month. I think that's the holidays. January, it'll start picking up some, but February is really when it kind of kicks into high gear. I think what happens in January is typically the weather. So I hope that kind of jogged your mind about our family-centered program and helped you remember what was going on that we talked about what First Steps is. Does anybody have a question? Somebody will have to tell me you have a question, because when I'm presenting, I can't see that.
I do have a question. This is Hannah Caudell. As far as First Steps go, is this for all families can apply, correct?
That is correct. If they suspect their child has a developmental delay, and typically that's going to be the signal to them, their child's not meeting an expected milestone, they can go to the point of entry and say, hey, I have a child that I'm concerned about, and the point of entry will then take that information. Now, as they go through the process, if the child does not meet eligibility, they're not going to receive services. But if they meet the eligibility, then they would, and the family wants the services, then they could enroll.
Okay,
but
thank
there
you.
is anybody, technically the law says anybody can refer, a parent, doctor, neighbor down the street, it doesn't matter. We get the majority of our referrals from physicians and parents.
Okay.
That's a good question. Any other
Alright.
question?
Going off of that, I'm sorry.
It's okay.
Going off of that, if a teacher were to refer a student who was having a child, would that parent know that the teacher do the parents know who referred them?
We recommend that people, let them know, hey, have you thought about a referral to First Steps? This is what they could do, sort of thing. But there's no requirement that that we share who referred them or that it's anonymous. So primarily, we usually, when we contact the family, and we do usually ask the referral source, have you talked to them about the referral? Because there's a way that you can approach it if it's, you're contacting that family out of the cold versus someone who said, yes, I talked to her. She knows you're going to call. That we will, handle that and just say a referral, was made for First Steps. We're just following up to see if you have any concerns about your baby, your child, and go from there.
Okay.
Paula, there's a question in the chat about income eligibility. So 200% over the poverty line or 250%? Could you clarify? Thanks.
Yes. There is no financial eligibility for the program. What we assess is a family share fee. That fee, it's, you have to be assessed a fee, to have to pay a fee, you have to be over 250% of poverty, your income. And that's just to participate. We do have allowances for families that if they have some extraordinary expenses, they have a family member they're supporting who has a catastrophic medical issue. They have another child with a disability. They, father lost his job, those types of, we will waive that parent fee for those hardships. So, but as far as having, because we don't want to deny access to services. So, we really work with families. So to be honest with you, we don't collect a lot of money out of family share. But as far as the child's eligibility, the eligibility is going to be determined by their developmental status.
I just
Did that
had
get it clarified?
Yeah, that clarified for me. I didn't know if I heard 200% or 250%. That's why I was like, which one did she just say? But I had a question regarding the fees, and it was just because recently I did my own little research into our state statutes. And so are the fees, like I noticed like it said something in our regulation, our statute about it said something about 5 area assessment fees, and that it should be like $175 per service event. Can you explain what all that is and what the fees go to? Like I was really confused when I read all that, because there's also one that said something about a center-based fee of $275 per service event. So how does the fees actually work? And as a parent, like when do you get told, oh, you're going to have this fee and this is what it goes to? Like, how does it all work? Sorry for the question. No, it's probably really involved.
That is a fine question. That is a fine question. The fees that you're talking about, that where it says, for an evaluation or a service, et cetera, those are our reimbursement fees that we pay to the provider. So if you're a provider in our system, dependent upon the service that you provided, then we're going to pay you for that service. So evaluations typically take longer. You have to write up a report, et cetera. So those are paid more for those than if they're doing a weekly visit with a family. We have 2 types of evaluation, so that's why you saw the 2 different rates. One is for what we call the primary level evaluation, and it's a higher rate because there are 2 tests that they have to do. They do a norm referenced instrument, and they must also do a criterion referenced assessment. A 5AA is our evaluation excuse me, for children who have an established risk. Children who, like a child with Down syndrome, we don't need to know that where his, how many standard deviations below the mean he is for a child of his, his age. A norm reference test would tell us that. What we do need to know is what's his functional level. So for that child, we already know he's got Down syndrome. He's eligible for the program, but we need to know where is he functionally so that we know how to do, what the IFSP should address and what the providers who work with that child, where they to know this is what he's doing. This looks like this is emerging. So they'll know where to start their work with them as well. Our family share fees are much, much different. Again, it's a sliding fee scale and it starts at $3 and then goes up to the highest level, which is $400. So depending upon the family's income and the number of family members in their household is where they're going to fall on that scale. So those are we have two different types of fees, so to speak. We have the family fees and then we have the reimbursement fees. Does that help you?
Yes, thank you. I was just kind of wondering, I was like reading that, I'm going, so are the parents responsible for those fees as well, or is that covered under insurance, or is that like how, yeah, I was just kind of wondering, as a parent, if someone told me, well, it's going to cost you this much money plus this much money, and I make, let's say that 250% above the poverty line, which I think is right around like $50,000, that's a lot for a parent of a family of 3, you know what I mean? So that's why I was just kind of curious as to how that all worked out. But thank you for clarifying that.
I will say that the people who put this in place many, many years ago, I think that was in like 2004, were very wise to make it simple. It's just one fee on the month. You can have 6 children in First Steps and you're still going to only pay one fee, and it's not a per child fee. So you're not paying that amount times 6. Some states, primarily one of our states that is contiguous to Kentucky, they charge families for each service on each IFSP. So you could be a family who, let's say you have IFSP number 1 and you had to pay on it, but you didn't get it all paid. Your account's in arrears, but now you're up to the next iteration of the IFSP. You're going to pay for the new IFSP services and still pay off the old ones. And that rolls forward. And so for families who have financial difficulty, and like you said, depending upon how families live, most people have a mortgage, they have a car payment, you've got to buy groceries, you've got to pay for electricity, those types of things. That rolling debt in that particular state, I think must be a nightmare. It's a nightmare for the family, but it's also a nightmare for administrators trying to figure out what's been paid, what's not been paid, rather than just saying, good grief, just go simple. Just go simple. But that was just a sidebar. Anything else?
I would like to give us a timestamp really quickly, just so we kind of know where we are. It's almost 10:40 and we are scheduled for break at 11. Just wanted to kind of let us know where we're at.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So we'll move on to talk about moving on out of Part C. Get my computer to wake up again. The transition involves both Part C and Part B. So it is if you want to think about it as a forced partnership, it's really a very supportive partnership. And basically it's to help, to think about effectively moving a child out of one service system into the next service system. And I think it's really critical. We have to think about this because most of our children are going to be in Part B services for a length of time. They're only with us in Part C for a very short period. So I think that whole experience, helping families step off on the right foot and feel good about this transition, is really critical for a long-term relationship with the school. So we have requirements, we have to notify KDE that we're going to have children who will be potentially eligible for Part B services under the preschool. And we have to hold a conference with the parents early enough that transition, all the pieces of paper to determine eligibility for the Part B services, all of that can get accomplished and be completed by the time that child turns 3. So that there's really not a break in service, so to speak. Yeah, on the Part C side, the IFSP, we have to have one that is designated as a transition plan. And it's to include steps and what services that are going to be provided to support that transition. And so, we talk about, educating the parent about what are the services? What would they look like? How could they prepare their child for that change in service delivery? I'll tell you something that the law didn't address. Children are incredibly resilient. And yes, it's a change. They typically adapt to preschool pretty fast. It's the parents who really need to be prepared. That change for the parent is very significant. And, as we get older, we lose a little of our resiliency. So, just keep that in the back of your mind, and we always tell our service coordinators, it's not just the child. You got to also think about how to prepare the parent. You have to make sure that you can transmit information to the schools, like the the current IFSP, any assessments, that type of thing. You get the parents' consent to do that. And then, are there other services or activities that might be needed to help support the child? That should be a good, rich transition discussion. What we do in Kentucky is a little different than what most states do. This started years and years and years ago. We send a list each quarter over to KDE. And that's a list of the children who are 2 years old and older. Then KDE looks at that list. They massage it to identify what school district that the child would potentially be attending. And they send out a list to the LEAs that here are the children who may be coming to your doorstep from First Steps. So it really works really well. What they found years and years ago was school districts don't really pay a lot of attention to things coming from the Department for Public Health, First Steps. But they do pay attention to what KDE says. And so this worked out really well to do that as a joint effort. Now, parents do have the option, the opt-out. They can request that their child's personally identifiable information not be sent to the LEA. We call it opt-out. That's the Part C lingo. About 5% of our families choose this, to not go to the LEA. Real frustrating for our directors of special education, because what can happen is a parent opts out, so the school, that child's name is not on the list. The school doesn't know anything about that child, and that one's not too bad. But the list could also go out with the child's name on it, and the family has changed their mind after the list went out. And they don't want the school to be notified of the transition conference or any of that. So what happens is, the point of entry, or sometimes they'll come to my office, I'll get a call that says, hey, we've got this little Johnny Jones that's supposed to have a transition conference, and we've not heard from the point of entry. And we can't say anything. We can't tell the district anything without permission from the parent to let the school know the parent opted out. So it is a little frustrating on that. And we always recommend people document. This child didn't come. you never heard from the parent, whatever it is, so that the school district doesn't get dinged for that. So as you know, we have the conference. It has to be timely. It can be 9 months before the third birthday. So it can be held pretty early. And that was put in the law so that for those children who have really complex needs or who are, some types of conditions a school district may not have seen, some of the rare conditions in Kentucky, like we do have a couple of children with SCID. That's, if they live to make it to school, that could be very different type of child that the school district would be dealing with. So they have to plan for that. We have to talk with the parents, and this is why we really love having the LEA there, about what are the preschool services? What's the eligibility? What are the timelines for Part B, and the availability of special education related services. And we have to talk about what are the program options for the time period from the third birthday through the remainder of the school year. Usually that's not a problem until you get to children with birthdays, what I call the summer birthdays, who start turning 3 between April and August. Schools close for the summer. And so what happens is you have children who are turning 3 between April and August, and you have a birthday May 1st, school closes by Memorial Day, let's say. Really and truly, are you going to bring that child in for 25 days of school? Maybe, maybe not. But again, then he's going to be out of school for the summer and not come back until the fall. So what happens to a lot of these children is that they go without services for up to 3 months because of that gap between the end of the school year and the start of the new school year. So, and that's a problem that we've had in Kentucky for years. It has always been like this, but we need to be cognizant about those summer birthday children. The law does not require the schools to be open in the summer just to receive those children. We have to, document that we have given information to the LEA and that we got parent consent. Those are pretty standard documentation pieces. And really just kind of to sum it up from a Part C view, our first step is to let KDE know that these children are coming. KDE lets the LEAs know. Then we have to hold transition meetings and develop at that transition meeting. Oftentimes they're developing the IFSP and talking with the LEA rep at the same time, representative. And then the school district's going to start working with that parent. If the parent says, yes, I am interested in exploring services for Part B or from the preschool, that's how they'll describe it. Then the school goes into their process to evaluate the child for eligibility and develop an IEP and have everything ready that when that child turns 3, they can come to the preschool program or whatever is the appropriate service delivery for that child. So there's always going to be late referrals. For us, it means children who turned 3 in less than 45 days, 45 days or less before they turn age 3. We finally hear about this child. We don't do eligibility on these children. What we do is work with the parent to refer them to the local school district. Because we have a 45-day window to determine eligibility and get an IFSP in place. We would not have, for some of these children, most of them, we're not going to have time to do that. So we're allowed by law to not have to do eligibility on them. If a child is not eligible under First Steps. You get that child who's 2 or older, they may have been in First Steps in the past and then the family withdrew. Now they come to you and they say, oh, well, yes, we were in First Steps. If they are not actively in First Steps at the time that the child is transitioning, you need to treat them just like any child who comes in. There is no special provisions. You don't have to have the IEP in place by 3rd birthday because those children were not actively coming to you from First Steps. So keep that in mind with some of those kiddos. But what we look at, first of all, we must refer to the LEA. That's a requirement unless the family opts out. KDE is to be, we call them and say, hey, we got a referral here from a child. They're going to turn 3 in 2 weeks. We're going to send them on over to you. And then you're going to process that child just like you would for any child that you got a referral who did not have an IFSP. As I'd say, the child who wanders in off the street. Now, according to Part B in the federal law, once a school district gets notified of a child in Part C and that the child is potentially eligible for Part B, the LEA must consider that an initial referral and start their process, sending procedural safeguards, and then attend the transition conference initiated by us if the parent approves. You'll know the parent approves because we would invite you. So at that point, once you get that referral and the parent gives you consent, you're going to evaluate the child and to determine eligibility for Part B services within the 60 school days. That's the reg for Part B. And if they're eligible, you're going to develop an IEP as soon as possible, but no later than 30 days. Now, when you do that, when you have an initial IEP meeting or an ARC meeting, as they're called in Kentucky, you should invite the service coordinator or the primary service provider to that initial meeting if the family wants them there. And again, it's family choice. But, especially the primary service provider, I'll make a plug to have them come because they are the ones who work with the child and the family, and they're going to know that developmental information more readily than what the service coordinator is. The service coordinator is going to be able to talk to you about the general parameters of IFSP and what's happened with the child. But if you really want that nitty-gritty information, you're going to get that from a primary service provider. You are required to consider the child's IFSP while you're thinking about developing that IEP. What kinds of services did they get and what were the natural environments when they were, that those services were delivered. Just about all of our services, 99% to 100% are in the home or in a community setting such as a park, the library, childcare, etc. So a different service delivery than what you may have in the public school.
Paula, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just wanted to give you another timestamp really quickly. It looks like we've got about 7 minutes left before 11 o'clock.
Okay. So children who get to us that are referred less than 90 days before the child's birthday, we're going to go, they're less than 90, not, at that point, we're going to go ahead, we're going to evaluate those children, we're going to do what we need to do with those children. And so they're going to have an IFSP, and they are going to have received some level of service during that time. Won't be for a long time, but for a short period. And again, these are the children, they will be the children included who are coming to you with an IFSP, and then triggers that getting that IEP in place by the 3rd birthday. However, there is a if you document, et cetera, in the federal law, there is a thing that even if the timeline expires after the child's 3rd birthday, you want to document, we didn't get this referral until, if this kid came to you on the 47th day before his 3rd birthday, you need to say, we are in process, didn't get it done according to the timeline because of the late referral to us. Again, children who were not eligible for Part C, you're going to treat them just by any child, that you see, and that, what we're happening. So that's going to bring, I think this is going to time good, Shasta. It's going to bring us to some discussion points for you when you go to your breakout. I want you all to think about, what would you want to know about school services if you were the parent of that toddler transitioning out of First Steps? What is it that you would want to know? And then to think about that you as school personnel, how can you support both the child and parent for that smooth transition? How can you support both of them? Like I said, usually children, they might have a day or two, but they're so resilient. They get adjusted. They see the other children. If you're in a group setting, that and they start playing, and they bounce back really pretty quick to the change. Parents, however, it may be more difficult. So think about, how could you support that parent during that change? So I will end here, and I think Shasta, are you the one directing them to the breakouts?
Hey. Oh, go ahead, Shasta. Sorry.
I say Becca's got it. I think she's in charge of breakouts.
Okay. All right. So
I have
Becca will lead the breakout.
Well, I think what's probably best now is just to go ahead and take a break, because we're a little bit off on time. And so I'm thinking we should go ahead and take a break and then come back. Andrea can share her content around preschool, and then we'll have our breakout rooms after Andrea shares her presentation. Any feedback on that idea?
This is Andrea. I'm fine with that. I know we do have a couple questions that I've been trying to answer in the chat, Paula.
Okay.
There was one about exiting assessments. Are they completed by First Steps for all transitioning students? Now, it was my understanding that that's more of a provider thing, like if the provider is going to do a 5-area, but I know that you've made some changes with that. Are they required to do a 5-area assessment before they transition?
They are required. However, I will tell you that parents sometimes kind of abscond or refuse to do the exit instead, but they are required to do an exit, because that's how we measure our child outcomes. When they come in, we do the baseline. When they leave, we get the exit data. So it is a requirement.
All right. And there were some questions in the chat about the services over the summer, which Kentucky does not offer at this point in time because it's been cost prohibitive in the past. And then there's been lots of thank yous for all of this, because these are high school teachers who don't know anything about early childhood. Welcome to the crazy world of early childhood.
That's right. Hey, it's an interesting world, isn't it, Andrea? But that's, that's great. We, as I always say, we're in the fun group, but I know high school, my sister's a high school teacher. She loves high school too, so she enjoys it.
The high schoolers are taller than me and bigger than me. No, thank you. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So Becca, if you want to go ahead with your plan, I think that's fine with me.
I think that we'll go ahead and break here for 5 or 10 minutes, come back, and then Andrea will present, and then we'll have our breakout rooms, and we can just address all of the contents that's been shared at that time. So if everyone will please come back at, let's say 11 11:05 or 11:10? What's the consensus?
11:05.
Okay, yes, ma'am. Everybody come back at 11:05 and Andrea will be prepared to begin her presentation at that time. Thank you.
Hey, Becca,
Yes, ma'am.
before you run off to get another cup of coffee, do I need to hit
said you
request
know.
control? I know you so well. Do I hit request control?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And then request.
It should just let you take it, honestly. I don't think I have the settings set up super, like you should be able to just
Oh.
take control. Yeah.
Okay, I got it now. So I'll go ahead and get my PowerPoint up here. So go get your coffee.
Okay. Thank you, friend.
Shasta, are you there still?
Andrea, I'm on. Is there something I can help you with?
I was just gonna ask Shasta if she wanted me to have this up or not. Can you see
Oh.
my
Yeah, I
slide?
can see your screen. Yeah,
Cool.
I
Alright,
can
I was
see
gonna see
it.
if she wanted me to keep it up or if she wanted me to wait. So, oh well.
Yeah. I'm in quarantine, so I'm not going anywhere.
How are you feeling?
Uh, I've been better. Um, I've had this now for 10 days, and then I went and got tested again on Friday. I was feeling, a little bit better. I was at least like I didn't have a fever for, 48 hours. So I was like, okay, good. I'm going to be free of this. And unfortunately, I tested positive still, and it's affected my breathing and everything. So they've got me on all kinds of wonderful drugs right now.
Oh,
So,
you take it easy, friend. I hate to hear that for you.
and
Oh
it
God,
sucks.
take it
I would,
easy.
I would not wish this on my worst enemy. This is horrible. I can't imagine like people who didn't get vaccinated, what they're going through if they got it. You know what I mean? It's crazy.
Yeah, well, take care of yourself.
Oh, always, always. But yeah, so I'm not going anywhere. So, yeah, I was
Well,
like,
make
I
sure you're
was
getting
sitting there
some water.
thinking,
Make sure you're drinking your water and drinking your fluids and your Gatorades and all that. Make sure you're doing all that.
oh God, you should see how much
Drink all
water
the
I have.
fluid.
Yeah, I'm gonna float away. Yeah, when they were talking about like the missed services between, the kids, like it's expensive, private stuff, but now with their new initiatives with, preschool, I was thinking, well, maybe they could try to do something, like that wraparound type care. That would be awesome for parents, and I think awesome for school too, like being able to keep those kids in some kind of service until they transition to preschool.
Yeah, it's just super expensive.
Oh,
It's
it
super expensive
is.
for the state. I mean, in general.
Yeah.
So, it's something that we've talked about a lot
I'm
because it's
sure.
been provided, but it's kind of cost
Well,
prohibitive. But
I was eavesdropping, so I'm just gonna butt
please
Oh.
do. Please eavesdrop.
But in the budget bill at the federal level, the Biden administration wants Part C to serve the children until their school starts. So that would work
Yeah.
really well. And they had budgeted, more money to the Part C system so that they could keep the kids in Part C until their school started, then they would transition.
Yeah.
And so I'm really hoping that stays in the bill when they finally
Oh,
finish it,
yeah.
because I think that would be so positive.
I think so
We'll see.
too. Like I had heard that as well, and I'm like, I'm hoping for that because you don't want kids without services, and they kind of need that. That's why they're, it's there. So, especially at a young age like that
Sha-
because they learn so much more. Their brains are uh, sponges at that point in time.
Shasta, I saw that you got back on. Is everything okay with my slides and stuff?
Yeah, I was just kind of hopping in and making sure I was everything, all my stuff was working before we
Good
hopped back
deal.
on.
Now I can't, like Paula said before earlier, I can't see anything. So if anybody has questions or things, just interrupt me, please, friend. And you gotta let me know when to go.
It is 11:05, Andrea, so in the interest of time, I think we should go ahead and get started.
All right. All right, welcome back from your break, friends. I hope everyone got some more coffee or water or juice or whatever you're drinking on this Saturday morning. I'm enjoying my Rainbow Bright Squad Goals cup. I'm not sure if you can see that or not, but I am an 80s baby, so I'm enjoying that this morning. My name is Andrea Bartholomew. I'm the School Readiness Branch Manager for the Department of Education. I work in all things preschool, all things early childhood. So I'm here to talk a little bit about the C2B transition as well as the state-funded preschool program. I do have a lot of slides, I have a lot of content, and I talk really fast. So please interrupt me, stop me if you have questions. I cannot see anyone's hands raised or anything like that. So feel free to just pop on and say, hey, Andrea, I got a question, or write it in the chat and I will get to it. We're trying to get through a lot of this content, but this will be posted. It will be put up in the shared site that you all have for Kentucky Leads. And I'm typically in these meetings on Saturdays and part of the group that kind of supports this work. So please feel free to just give me an email or shoot me a phone call or anything like that if you have questions about preschool. All right. Whoa, too fast. Go back. So this is one of my new favorite quotes. I love a quote. Quotes are my jam. There's 1,825 days between the day a child is born and the day they turn 5, which is when they would go to kindergarten. That's not that long. When you think about it that way, we have 1,825 days to make a difference in the life of a child. And that is, research tells us those are the days that our kids' brains are learning and growing at the most rapid rate they will their entire lives. So from birth to age 5, birth to age 8, if you think about the primary program, is the time that we have the ability to impact the future trajectory of our world with our students. So when you think about, oh, it's a long time, especially if you have little ones. I have 2 small kids. I have lots of my preschool babies. When you think about how long those days are, can sometimes make you think, but that's not a lot of time that we have to affect our future. So a lot of this, what I have, kind of goes right with what Paula was talking about. As part B, we're on the other side of this transition now. It really should be as seamless as you can make it. And as Paula said earlier, not to mention that those kids are resilient. I did a little applause feature. I don't know if Paula saw that or not. The family is transitioning. This could be the family's very first exposure to public school. They may not have had a great public school experience themselves. They may have been in a place where they didn't feel supported or taken care of, and they are now putting their most precious and prized possession in the hands of that public school that they feel did not treat them right. That's a huge thing when you think about it. So making sure that not just our kiddos, but we think about that family as well. Also that family is coming from an incredibly family-centric environment. First Steps is all about the family, right? The family gets lots of support to help that child meet their goals. And in public school, in Part B, yes, the family is supported. Preschool has all kinds of things that we do with our families. K-12 has all kinds of things that we want to do with our families, but it's just not quite so family-centric. It's more about the kid, what the kid needs, what the kid can do, what the kid cannot do, things of that may be really different for that family, never having experienced it before. So the school district's responsibilities, you need to attend that transition meeting now. Sometimes you get that phone call at 11:30 and they say, oh, hey, yeah, we're having this meeting at 1 because that's when the parent can meet us. Can you come? Try your very best to make it. The more communication you have with the service providers in your regions, the point of entries, the service providers, the managers that they've got, making sure that you have those communication plans down and everyone knows everybody. The best transitions happen when there's like a monthly meeting or a bi-monthly meeting with the First Steps people in the area and the school districts in the area. That way you know what's coming down the pike. And these, oh my gosh, I need you at this meeting in 2 hours, that's a rarity, not a norm. But you should attend that meeting because that meeting is where a lot of information needs to be provided by you. And that meeting is where the parents can choose to complete that referral. If you don't show up, they may choose not to. They may say, you know what, we're just going to send them to childcare. We think they're okay. We think we can do it at home. We have private therapy set up, you know, if you don't attend that meeting. So in that conference, you need to make sure that that family understands the referral process. You need to make sure that they understand that this is not an overnight thing. This is something that will take time, that you have until the 3rd birthday to get that. Making sure that they know that you have 60 school days from the time of the referral if that comes before the child's 3rd birthday. I'm making sure they know that this is a process that takes many meetings. Sometimes our parents may think, oh, it's one meeting and I'm done. No, you know, we know ARCs for eligibility are several meetings across the board. Make sure that you talk with the parent about getting permission for those First Steps personnel to attend. It's really important, like Paula was saying, really important they attend those referral ARCs. They know that kid and family the best. They know what that kid needs to work on. They will provide you with all the information you need for something that we'll talk about a little bit later, the dirty words RTI. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. They'll provide you with that information. So you really want them to be there. You want them to be a part of that group, but the parents have to have grant permission for that, of course. As an ARC, you can only invite so many people based on our regulation, but parents can invite anybody they want. So we want to make sure that they do invite those First Steps personnel. Making sure you get that release of information for transfer of records, making sure you tidy up all of that stuff, and finding that verified parent. That can be different from the First Steps process and the school district process, making sure you have the right person at the table to sign those forms. Our families are not just moms and dads anymore now. We have a lot of single family, we have a lot of foster families, we have a lot of families where parents may be incarcerated, but you still have to go get that signature from that parent, making sure that if it is a foster situation, you either have the right person to attend that can sign the forms, or you have a surrogate come in from the court system. All of that is transition conference is a time to figure all that out. That way you're not at the table with the referral going, oh, you're not real mom, you can't really sign this? Oh, great. Who's going to sign this referral form? Making sure that you have everything you need with that. So this goes through a lot of regulation here. So we've got some of the same things that Paula was saying about the child find system, that you have to have that process for a non-district source referral. First Steps, a parent, a doctor, anyone can make that referral to First Steps. They can make that referral to the public school system as well. This is just straight from IDEA, so I'm not going to read it all to you because all of this, all of these words ends up here. Response to intervention. We know response to intervention is the thorn in our side sometimes, but it comes with a purpose, right? It comes with a purpose of that not every child will need an IEP. Not every child coming from First Steps will qualify for state-funded preschool. They have to have adverse impact on their education, and they have to meet those standards. And to help you show that, to accept that referral, you have to have that intervention data. Your intervention data comes from parents and providers. That First Steps provider can give you all of the intervention data that you need for that child. They are receiving services. They have a suspected or known disability. They are receiving services from, receiving interventions from a provider and or the parents. They'll be able to give you the information that you need. And if for some reason you can't make that connection happen, for some reason, you know, maybe the service provider ran off to Hawaii because they won the lottery and just left and didn't leave you with anything, you can complete RTI concurrently with an evaluation. That is something that happens in preschool. That should happen all the time in preschool, is that you do it at the same time with an evaluation. You see the big bolded thing, RTI must not delay the evaluation of a child with a suspected or known disability. You should not allow RTI to delay referral or evaluation of any child in your program. Point blank, end of story. It can be doubly important with these kiddos coming in from First Steps because they're known to have a disability, or they have a suspected developmental delay, or they've been receiving intervention services. So we know that they're going to be something's going to be found in that evaluation process, right? We know that as they move through the evaluation process, they're going to need extra support as they move into preschool. They're going to need extra support as they move into kindergarten. So you must not delay that evaluation. I know that can get super sticky with paperwork, with the stuff that needs to go on Infinite Campus, with monitoring protocols, with folks who may not understand early childhood world and how that works. But OSEP, Office of Special Education Programming, as well as the Department of Education, support this. We do not delay the evaluation of a child based on RTI. Now, if you have to delay that evaluation because you can't find a verified parent, because the family won't produce the child, things like that, that's a different story. This is delaying the evaluation because of the RTI paperwork. Paula and I talked about this a little bit when we were prepping for this meeting. Paula, did you want to add anything to this?
No, I really think you covered that really well. I mean, the bottom line just comes down, you can't use this as a way to stretch out that timeline.
Absolutely.
You really,
it isn't.
The information's there. You just got to dig for it.
Yes,
Andrea,
and you might. I heard something.
Sorry, go ahead, Andrea.
Thomas, is that you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay. Yeah, what's up?
There's a hypothetical in the chat. So if grandparents are raising a child and parent is MIA but not incarcerated, but the parent has signed the document, can the ARC proceed with grandparent name on the notarized form and allow them to make educational decisions or give permission to evaluation or special education services?
I'm going to direct you right back to your district for that question. I'm gonna have you talk with your district and with your DOS. If you are the DOS in your district, talk with your board attorneys, making sure that you have everything wrapped up legally that you need. Typically, if the bio parent has signed off and it's notarized, that is something that they may be willing to accept, but you may still need to have a surrogate. Yes, I'm going to direct you right back to your district for that. Sorry. Any other questions in the chat?
I think that is it.
All right.
Yep.
Perfect. So, not to beat this RTI to death, but knowing that this is not just for our First Steps kids, but this is for all of our students in special education from age 3 to age 21, that we don't delay that process because of that paperwork, because of that intervention. We know some kids will come into us that need to have intervention because they maybe just been sitting on the front porch their whole life and never been exposed to their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s. They just may need to have some time. And then we know others that come in that should have been receiving services from First Steps since birth, and they just haven't been. So it's a kind of a process of using your professional judgment, using your expertise in the area of special education to know, okay, what needs to happen. And that's why we use our RTI. That's why we use this intervention process, is so because not every child needs an IEP. And so it's an important process, but you don't want to delay that evaluation. All right. So after you've evaluated and eligibility, you have to provide those results to the parents by the child's 3rd birthday. Now, if the transition process takes place, the 90 days before the kid's birthday, you very well could meet that, or have the 60-day timeline that would be in place, and that could be well before the child's birthday. Most often, the 60-day timeline isn't runs past the third birthday, that doesn't matter. So if you meet with them and you have 50 days to get things done, you have 50 days to get things done. That child's third birthday is the deadline to have this stuff, have the ARC wrapped up, and to have the evaluation and eligibility meetings wrapped up on or by the third birthday.
Andrew, we have another question.
Yeah.
Has Zoom and the mainstreaming of virtual instruction improved the implementation of early intervention RTI?
Negative. I think it's made it worse. It's my opinion. I think that we've not been able, I think sometimes it's harder to do those things over when you can't see a kid, you can't feel the parent, you can't get that in-person kind of information. I think Zoom has created processes for us as a state that are, it's easier to get a hold of people maybe, but I'm not sure if it's improved anything. Helpful? I don't know. I think that it absolutely has impacted the transition process. I would say both negative and positive. Like I said, it's easier to get a hold of people sometimes, but other times it makes it feel almost like an afterthought instead of, oh, I have to go to the school and I've got to sit down with this person. I got to really talk about my kid. It's more of a, oh, I'm here on Zoom, but I'm really watching TV or watching my kid or doing this or doing that and not really engaging in that process. Any other questions, Thomas?
That's it.
Perfect. So if the child qualifies for Part B services, you offer placement in the state-funded preschool program or provide options in the community like Head Start. Head Start is a valid placement for students with a disability. Each Head Start has to collaborate with their local school districts in their areas to provide those special education services. Now, some Head Starts hire IECE teachers or special education teachers. Others, it'll have to be provided by the school district. The end of the line is with the school district to provide those services to Head Start students, but that collaboration is really important. But Head Start is a valid placement for students with disabilities. If the child does not qualify for IDEA Part B services, which does happen, parents sometimes automatically assume that if they're in First Steps, they'll be in preschool, and that's not necessarily true. Providers sometimes school teachers and school districts assume, oh, this kid's coming from First Steps, they're gonna qualify for us. They may not. Where we have to have statements of adverse impact, that we have to see that it's going to impact their educational journey, and we have to see that it's going to that they are significantly different than their typical quote peers. That can be a place where some kids don't qualify. A lot of times that can be in the speech world. They may qualify for speech in First Steps, but not qualify for speech at the IDEA Part B level. If that happens, make sure that you offer community options. Head Start, they could qualify there for income or based on other things if they're a foster child or things of that nature. Head Start has some different qualifications. Child cares, private preschools, making sure you have that information to give to parents to say, hey, they really think we're really sorry they can't come to us, but here's some other choices for you in your community. You're not just leaving them high and dry.
So Andrew, there's another question around transportation. Our district does not offer pre-K. Our district does not offer pre-K transportation, causing some issue for kids coming from First Steps to pre-K.
Transportation rules the world. It really does. That is an issue. If I would encourage you to email me, we can talk about that offline because that is absolutely an issue. Transportation is not required by school districts, but it is, if they do offer it, there are requirements that they have to follow. But yeah, won't you jot my email down here at the end and we'll have a little conversation offline about that.
Okay, I'm gonna do one more question, Andrea. And it says, does preschool need to be the first option before Head Start if both are available?
Yeah, not necessarily. I mean, I think you provide the options that you have in the community. So if you have a great Head Start program and a great preschool program, you can offer both of those options. You can even ask someone from the Head Start to attend. I mean, ask the parent, say, hey, parent, is it okay if we invite someone from the Head Start to attend? A lot of times in our transition meetings, they'll have a Head Start representative and a state-funded preschool representative, especially if it's a really great communication. If they have a great communication between First Steps and Part B, you'll see that a lot. A lot of it comes down to what the child and family need the most. Sometimes that might be the placement in the Head Start Center. Sometimes that'll be the placement in the state-funded center. Sometimes our parents have very strong opinions about where they want to send their child. Maybe they were a Head Start kid and they have great memories of that Head Start Center in your community, and they want to send them there. It's a valid placement. So I think it's definitely something that you kind of offer as a continuum. Hope that helps.
Like in my community, our Head Start's 5 days a week and full day and transportation to and from. But the preschool that I was director of was only half day, and we only had transportation for part of the day. So if parents needed the 5-day childcare instead of half day, 4 day a week, like that's when they would go to Head Start instead, and we would just send our staff over to provide services to that
Is that
child.
Abby?
Yeah.
Hi, Abby.
Hi, Andrea.
Yeah.
I miss you.
I miss you too, friend. Yes, it's definitely that can definitely play a part with what our kids need or what the families need as far as services, for sure. It's always making sure that you have that great communication, and you guys did. So I think that was an important piece there.
But just
All right.
about the transportation, Andrea, I don't
Is
mean
it
to,
you?
but just my personal soapbox, if a child qualifies for services and a family can't, if transportation is the barrier, then that is our responsibility to find a way to make that happen for that kid somehow.
Yes, and there's some
I
IDA things in there. There's some reg
Yeah.
in there about transporting kids. If you have to transport them to get services for their IEP. That's why I wanted to have a conversation, because there's some things in there that we may be able to push on in the IDA law, and then in thinking about transportation for sure. If you don't transport them, they're not going to come. I mean, that's kind of the end of the day. Not just our kids with IEPs, but all of our kids. So, is there any other questions or anything, Thomas, in the chat before I zoom on here?
No, there are no more questions.
All right. So IDA requirements for Part B. All of this has to happen before the child's third birthday. That's why it's so important that we have that smooth transition piece and that communication between the first steps in the district. That third birthday comes up quick and fast. There's one district that we work with that says a child turns 3 every day, and then there's some that have 2 first steps kids all year. So it's really important that you have the plan and the process down no matter what situation you're in. Now, all other students that would be referred for special education service are under that 60-day school timeline. First step students are as well. It's just that third birthday is the hard deadline for that one. It doesn't matter if it's only been 50 days or 45 days or whatever. That third birthday is the end. With all other students, you'd have that 60-day timeline. So sometimes our transitions can be more like Rocky Road. First step provider issues, like I said earlier, maybe that person just bounced to Hawaii and was like, I'm out, I'm done. Perhaps that there's been some turnover in your area and that child and family have seen several different providers, and maybe you don't know which one to contact, which one has the most recent information. District confusion on where they're going, who they need to talk to. District confusion on some of the timelines and the deadlines, that can be an issue. Getting that parent input is really important, and sometimes that can be hard to get our parents to come in and talk with us. The Zoom meetings have made that part a little bit easier, but again, there's nothing like sitting down across from a parent. And then that student says ineligible for Part B services. That's something that most people, I don't say most, a lot of people don't realize that just because you do that doesn't mean that you can do this automatically. There's a high probability and a good chance, but it's not an automatic entry. So these barriers do come up, and making sure that you address them as the DOS or as a leader in your district, making sure that you have plans. You support your preschool coordinator, making sure that you support your preschool teachers, whomever is responsible for the preschool transitions in your world, or the transitions from first steps in the world. Making sure they have your full support and making sure that you know what's going on with it is really important. So these are my discussion questions. So Becca, are we going to do discussion questions now, or do you want me to fly on to state funded preschool and keep moving?
I think it's probably best to, let's see, it's 11:30.
We were
Mm,
set to kind of be in this topic until about 11:40. Again, not that that's not flexible, but just, so that we know kind of where we are with time.
Okay, so let's have a 10-minute. Let's send I'll send everyone to the chat rooms for 10 minutes. And I'll bring us back at 11:40.
That sounds
Hang
good.
on, did you have more to share, Andrea, after
I
this?
do. I have a big chunk of stuff about
That's what I
state funded
thought.
preschool to share. But again, if we don't get to that, that's fine. This was kind of the more connective piece with Paula's work. The rest of
Let's
it,
not rush it. Let's go ahead and have our discussion room, our chat rooms, and then we can always at a later date discuss the state funded preschool piece. Even if we have you record that as a training, Andrea, and make it available to scholars, but let's go ahead and break out now in our breakout rooms.
sure. Do I need to do something with my question that I just took down? Do I need to like put it in the chat or?
Yeah,
anything?
put it in the chat. That'd be good.
To ask any questions that you might have. And so with that, Becca, it looks like we're on to you for some group sharing questions and reflections.
Thank you, Shasta. Some of you I know had a little bit of trouble joining the group. I did adjust the settings to allow users to join a room or come back to the main room. That's a setting I'll try to utilize in the future as well. And it looks like some of us are still filtering in. But in the meantime, let's go ahead and begin. We had I think 6 or 7 rooms. So if there's someone, I'll just randomly call. Let's see, someone from Amanda's group, Amanda, Andrea, another Andrea, Josh, and Krista. I'm sorry. If someone from that group could share out a little bit about what the conversation was like.
I don't mind to share. We just talked about how a few of us are in preschool transitions and first step transitions now, and we talked about how it could happen that a kid kind of get lost and shuffle. The name come from first steps months before the child turns 3. The dose receives it or the point of contact receives it. It kind of doesn't get trickled down, and there's just a lot of people involved in the transition, from the dose to the preschool coordinator to usually a principal or counselor at the school, the teacher in the classroom, and then we have a situation where last minute there's a kid coming and we've got to scramble and have a meeting and so on and so forth. And so we talked about the importance of having a system in place and that system consistently be followed so that as these names come from first steps, then the system starts. And hopefully that, would help for those few instances where kids' names kind of get dropped or misplaced or shuffled, or, there's questions about, did we get it? Did we not? That kind of thing.
Thank you, Krista. I saw somebody clapping their hands. I'm not sure which participant that was, but somebody had your back on that.
It was totally me, Becca. It was totally me.
Okay, Andrea. Our next group is Catherine Cooper, Amy Howard, Jen, and Ashley Cook. If someone from that breakout room will please provide a quick summary of the conversation.
I don't mind speaking. Actually, I think Jennifer, she had a lot of good points. I think she has a great background with preschool. But we were talking a lot about, and they mentioned it just now, having students coming into preschool that either are not in first steps or they weren't caught prior, and then the schools having that they're prepared for them. We also talked a little bit about just making sure that preschool students are with their same age peers and how important that peer interaction is, and that oftentimes we find that preschoolers are able to interpret each other's communication better than sometimes adults are. And so when there's that lack of communication in a special education preschool classroom, then you have a lot of behavior because everybody is struggling. So I think that, I don't know if I'm missing anything, if you all want to talk, but I think that was kind of the crux of our conversation.
Katie, you nailed it. Thanks for talking for us.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Next, Hannah Cottle, Carmen Robertson, Daniel Dempsey, Katie Gumnick. Will one of you please share?
I can share a little bit, you guys. Carmen, thankfully, is pretty knowledgeable. So our group was sort of leaning heavy on her just to figure out how this all works. And one of the ways we talked about that our district, I'm in the same district as Carmen, that our DOS sort of supports the whole transition program is we have a consultant, a preschool consultant at the district office that attends all the transition meetings. And Carmen was just saying that has alleviated a lot of missed deadlines and missed students in the recent years since she hired that position.
Thanks, Katie. Next group, Melissa, Shannon, Stacy, Bridget, and Paula. You guys got lucky. You guys had Paula in there. Will someone from that group please share out?
We talked about the importance of connection at those transition meetings and making sure that the parents know that they have a point of contact. We talked, I attend those meetings as part of my district and make sure that they know they can call me and get in touch with me anytime with any questions after the meeting, and how important that is for families to feel more comfortable with that transition to public school.
Thank you, Shannon. Next, our next room is Alan, Misty, Krista Taylor, or Paige Hale. Will one of you please share?
Sure. We talked a lot about, it's intimidating, all of those stakeholders involved, the stress on dates and making sure, we want to make students first priority. So we just said the extent of transparency when it comes to all of the stakeholders, making sure that there's, such a very obvious timeline and stressing that timeline. That was a big discussion for us. But we all said we really enjoyed the breakout rooms. They're very meaningful.
Oh, thank you, Krista, for that feedback. Our next room is Pete, Stacy Hutchinson, Miranda Artasia. Will one of you please share out?
I don't care to share. We really focused on the preschool, first steps to preschool transition and what that looks like and how we're going to support parents and families in that transition. And I said one of the things that I would want to know are the teachers in that public preschool setting, are they IECE certified? Do they have special education experience? Do the paraprofessionals have experience with kids with special needs or training to work with those kids? And then Pete mentioned, those wraparound services. We're getting these things in First Steps right now. Do those continue over into the public preschool setting? And if they don't, why? Why don't those continue? And just explaining that to parents and making sure that they understand what they're getting with that transition. Another one of our group members mentioned, the frequency of progress reporting when they're in First Steps. They get a lot more progress reported to them much more frequently, but when you get to preschool, typically that's only reported about every 9 weeks, sometimes sooner, if a parent requests that. So just clarifying that information with the parent. And then another one of our group members also mentioned, if my child has medical needs, how are you going to care for those? Do you have the training to deal with that? Because that child has been with them all day, every day for the beginning of their life. And that parent has been there to make sure everything runs smoothly. And now they're not going to have that opportunity. So just reassuring parents that medical needs will be accurately met in the public preschool setting. And then lastly, the differences in communication in First Steps. There's a lot more face-to-face communication, but when you get to that preschool setting, it looks a little bit differently. So just letting parents know what to expect.
Thanks, Miranda. Our final group, Abby, Lindsay, Allison, or Kelly. Will one of you please summarize?
Sure. So we talked a little bit about a trend that we've noticed recently where we have incoming students, whether it's the preschool or even kids who are just coming into kindergarten, that appear to have delays, and there's been possibly a lack of referral through First Steps. So we kind of had a conversation about how strategies to maybe ensure that those referrals are coming through, whether it's through the pediatrician's office. We also talked about the stigma that can be associated with identifying your children with a delay. So I know somebody spoke about an individual, a parent who they knew that the pediatrician had mentioned a potential for maybe like speech services through First Steps, and the parent found that really offensive. So I think being able to have conversations that reduce the stigma and convey early intervention as a really effective and beneficial thing that many children can use.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for sharing out. I believe I fixed the permission issue with our discussion board Reflect and Respond. So if you have time over the next week, if you could continue this conversation or just practice posing a question, maybe respond to someone that asks a question. Let's try to continue our small group conversations, or even our whole group conversations, and Reflect and Respond. So Shasta, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
All righty, thank you. And sorry everybody for my screen started being really weird and I had to transition back over, so I apologize for that. But yeah, so we're just at the evaluation and wrap up time. We always have the Saturday session satisfaction survey, and I just want you guys to know these are so helpful to us. We do review these. We look over your comments. They're so valuable. We look over just kind of how things went overall, and it helps us make decisions about what needs to happen next time, how to improve, what your questions were, what your barriers were. So it's super helpful. So for those of you that have been faithfully filling out those surveys and giving us good feedback, I want you to know that's very important and very valued. And so if somebody from my team will drop this into the chat, that would be great. And if you'll just complete that before you leave, like before you're done for the day, if you'll complete that for us, that would be great. Are there any questions or additional comments that anybody has?
I have a question. I know we had talked about having some of the sessions being open sessions to other people. I teach a master's course at Western for people who are wanting to get a certification in moderate and severe disabilities. And I was looking ahead at the calendar, and I thought maybe that session in March or April might be something that would be helpful for my students. Would that be something that they would be able to attend?
Hey, so good question. So initially we did talk about opening up the sessions, but due to COVID and other things, we kind of put that on a pause. So we'll follow back up with you in regards to, opening the session, but for now, it's just specifically for the scholars.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As a reminder, though, these Saturday sessions are recorded and available on YouTube to anyone, so that's a possibility. If you'd like to share that link, you may do that. Are there any other questions or comments before we have 5 minutes? I can't believe that we actually finished with 5. Andrea, you have a question?
I'm gonna take your 5 minutes. No, I'm joking. I just wanted to say thanks to the scholars and to the team for engaging in these conversations about early childhood. I know that this is a place where if this is not the world that you live in, it can be a little bit confusing. It can be a little bit like what the what, but it's a place that Paula and I know both feel the same way, that we can truly impact the future of our kiddos in a very unique way. And so we love to talk about this stuff. So anytime that you need either of us, please feel free to get with us and to chat with us. And we appreciate you really digging into this and to really putting forth effort to learn more about the world that we love.
Yeah, and if I could just jump in, and so I just want to say thank you to you, Andrea. Thank you, Paula, for joining us today as our presenters and facilitators. We really appreciate it. The information was very, very important and valuable, and I know that our scholars will take this information back to their districts. And also, thank you, scholars. Thank you, for bringing your best self. The Saturdays that we have these Saturday seminars, they're very important. So we appreciate you for coming in, showing up, and being engaged in conversations on these Saturdays. So thank you.
And with that, I'm sure